Another Disney news update today, covering all the latest happenings across the Walt Disney Company from coast to coast and around the world. Hi everybody, Wade for the Kingdom Report back with you once again, and here is what's happening. The New York Times reporting that Governor Ron DeSantis asked Florida lawmakers on Tuesday to consider the termination of self-governing privileges that Disney World has held in the Orlando area for 55 years. He acted after Disney, the state's largest private employer, paused political donations in Florida and condemned a new state education law. The Florida legislature had already been scheduled to convene this week for a special session on congressional redistricting. On Tuesday, Mr. DeSantis, a Republican, issued a proclamation allowing the Republican-controlled body to also take up bills that would eliminate special tax districts that were created before 1968. Florida has hundreds of such districts, but almost all were set up after that date, with one of the exceptions covering Disney World. It was put together in 1967 and essentially allows the mega resort, which employs roughly 80,000 people, to function as its own municipal government. Disney's special zone is called the Reedy Creek Improvement District and gives the company considerable control over the planning and permitting process for construction on its 25,000-acre property, including road building. Reedy Creek also levies taxes on Disney to pay for the resort's own fire and medical response battalions, among other services. Disney World even generates some of its own electricity through Reedy Creek. Mr. DeSantis and Disney began to publicly spar last month after the company condemned the parental rights in education law, which, among many things, restricts discussion about sexual orientation and gender identity in Florida classrooms. Quote, "Our goal as a company is for this law to be repealed by the legislature or struck down in the courts, and we remain committed to supporting the national and state organizations working to achieve that," Disney said on March 28th when Mr. DeSantis signed the legislation into law. Disney had initially tried not to take a side on the measure, at least publicly, which prompted an employee revolt. In response, Mr. DeSantis took aim at Disney, chiding it as woke and sending a fundraising email to supporters saying it had lost any moral authority to tell you what to do. A couple of Florida legislators then began threatening to revoke Disney World's special tax district. Disney declined to comment on Tuesday's development. Once again, our thanks to the New York Times for that story. Continuing now, News Nation is reporting that mask mandates have changed again at the Disney parks. Walt Disney World has dropped all mask mandates, according to a statement posted to its website on Tuesday. Face coverings are optional for guests in both outdoor and indoor locations, as well as Disney transportation. It is recommended guests who are not fully vaccinated continue wearing face coverings in all indoor locations, including indoor attractions and theaters, and on enclosed transportation, with a release saying, "Please note, face coverings are not permitted while experiencing water slides or in the water," close quote. In California, Disneyland's guidelines state that face coverings are required, quote, "in certain indoor settings, including Disney shuttles, and in health settings such as first aid for guests 2 years or older." Face coverings are strongly recommended in other indoor settings and optional outdoors. Walt Disney World's change in policy comes a day after a federal judge in Tampa struck down the CDC's mask mandate for public transportation. The decision left airlines, airports, rail stations, and other transit hubs free to nix mask requirements. Major airlines and airports in a number of U.S. cities quickly scrapped the mandates. Once again, our thanks to News Nation for that story. And CNN Business reports that Disney investors aren't having as awful a year as Netflix shareholders, but that's not saying very much. Netflix stock has plunged more than 40% this year, ahead of its first quarter earnings release after the closing bell on Tuesday. Meanwhile, shares of Disney have dropped nearly 15% so far in 2022. That makes Disney one of the worst performers in the Dow, which is down just 4% this year. Both companies have been plagued by concerns about streaming competition and the fierce battle for subscribers. Inflation is a problem too. A recent report from the United Kingdom showed that consumers are cutting back on streaming services due to worries about rising prices, and UK customers were dropping Disney Plus at a faster rate than Netflix and Amazon's Prime Video. Disney also owns Hulu and the sports streaming service ESPN+. Despite Disney's massive library of movies and shows thanks to its own branded studio, as well as Marvel, Pixar, and Star Wars creator Lucasfilm, investors are worried that this abundance of content won't boost streaming subscription growth enough to offset slowdowns in its traditional broadcast and cable TV businesses. Quote, Disney+, Hulu, and ESPN+ have the scale and management conviction to over time be a massive global streamer, said JP Morgan analyst Philip Cusick in a report on Tuesday. But he added that this isn't necessarily as good a business as Disney used to have in TV. Traditional media companies like Disney used to rely a lot more on lucrative advertising sales and affiliate fees from cable companies to carry their channels. But the shift to streaming has upended that model. Investors now are more interested in streaming margins and not merely the bragging rights that come from how many subscribers a company has. Quote, the market appears to be moving past rewarding media companies as it did in 2020 and 2021 simply for their forecast of future streaming subscriber growth, said MoffettNathanson analyst Michael Nathanson in a report last month. Now it seems that investors are looking further down the income statement and also finally digging through the cash flow statement to try to determine the underlying steady state profitability of the pivot to direct-to-consumer content delivery, Nathanson added. Nathanson lowered his price target on Disney in March from $165 a share to $150, due in part to worries about lower profit margins. Disney has also come under fire after CEO Bob Chapek initially refused to speak out against Florida's Parental Rights and Education bill, which bans schools from teaching students from kindergarten through the third grade about gender identity and sexual orientation. Following criticism from Disney workers, Chapek eventually did condemn the law, but some Republicans are now threatening Disney with boycotts, while many Democrats feel Chapek's response came too late and had some pining for the days of former Disney CEO Bob Iger, who was a more outspoken advocate for progressive causes. Whether or not the Florida controversy is having an actual impact on Disney Plus subscriptions, movie and theme park attendance, and ratings for Disney-owned ABC and ESPN is up for debate. However, one analyst noted that the parental rights and education issue could also hurt the company in another way if more liberal Hollywood celebrities decide not to work with the House of Mouse. Quote, the single most important Disney asset is its brand next to its talent. If the controversy leads to a loss of key creative talent, it would clearly be a negative, said Loop Capital's Alan Gould in a report earlier this month. Whatever happens, it's clear that Wall Street is not happy with how Disney has performed since Chapek took over from Iger in February 2020. Disney shares are now hovering near the lowest level since November 2020. To be sure, Chapek was dealt a bad hand since the start of his tenure coincided with the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States, an event that led to a dramatic slowdown in tourism and leisure activities like going to see movies. But most are hopeful that Disney will be able to soon turn things around. Michael Morris of Guggenheim Securities wrote in a report last month that the parks business should rebound thanks to new attractions like Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Avengers Campus, increased visits from foreign travelers to the flagship resorts in Orlando and California, and a full reopening of international parks and cruise lines. And JP Morgan's Cusick noted Disney's strong slate of movies this summer and later this year as a positive. Box office revenue should start to bounce back thanks to the upcoming releases of sequels for Marvel's Doctor Strange, Thor, and Black Panther, the Pixar movie Lightyear, about the inspiration behind the popular Toy Story character. Also coming is the highly anticipated first sequel to the 2009 hit Avatar. Disney's Marvel, along with partner Sony, has already proven that film fans will return to theaters in droves for big blockbusters. Last year's Spider-Man: No Way Home is the third highest grossing movie ever in the United States. Thanks so much for being a part of the broadcast today. To ensure that you are always up to date, click that notification bell and subscribe button for the channel, and if we've earned it, a thumbs up is always appreciated. For the Kingdom Report, I'm Wade Heath. We'll see you next time for another installment of the Disney News Update.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.